Welcome to this wonderful lesson. Willpower, scientifically known as self-control, is rooted in the brain's prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for decision-making and impulse control, as we discussed in previous videos. It relies on neurotransmitters, especially dopamine, influencing motivation. Genetic factors and life experiences shape individual self-control. Stable glucose levels for optimum brain function and other environmental factors like stress, exhaustion, and support all have an impact on willpower. Now, I'm sure that many of you believed that these factors account for most of our willpower, and for a long time, the scientific community itself held this belief. Recent research suggests that these biological factors may not be as important as previously thought. These factors most likely account for only about 30% of our willpower, rather than the estimated 70%. It's likely that what goes on in our heads has a far greater influence on our levels of willpower. That's what we're going to talk about today. 5 psychological factors that will make you more motivated, increase your willpower, and keep you away from ego depletion. But before we get into these 5 psychological factors, I'd like you to subscribe to our channel and leave a comment. The first factor is a technique known as chunking. Magician David Blaine, one of the greatest in the world, has one of the best chunking examples. Blaine is highly renowned for his acts of endurance, whether it involved putting in hours inside an ice block or creating a word record by holding breath underwater. You can only imagine the amount of willpower that was needed for that. Blaine was able to accomplish this by using chunking to generate a constant supply of willpower. Chunking is the practice of breaking down a large task into tiny pieces. Blaine divided the number of hours he wanted to spend in this block of ice into manageable chunks, telling himself, "Okay, I just need to make it through the next hour." Repeatedly, rather than concentrating on the entire 60 hours, he wanted to spend in it. This works because in order to conserve energy, our brain is wired to use willpower as efficiently as possible. By breaking down the task into smaller chunks, Blaine was able to focus his willpower on short-term goals, making it easier for his brain to manage and conserve energy. This allowed him to sustain his willpower over a longer period of time, ultimately helping him achieve his goal of spending 60 hours in the block of ice. The truth is that our willpower is practically boundless. But at some point, our brains all say to ourselves, "Nope, you've used enough. That's all you're getting for today." So, when faced with a monumental task, your brain says, "Nope, we can't do this task. It's far too big. We lack the necessary willpower to complete the task." In chunking, however, you concentrate on one small chunk at a time. Then your brain says, "Yes, we could do this. Here's a little more willpower." That's why, in one of our previous lessons, I mentioned that we should set a low bar when developing our routines. We're basically using chunking to get a little bit of extra willpower by setting a low bar, which is the minimum amount of work we're allowing ourselves to do. Just enough to force ourselves to stick to our habits. So, how can we apply this to our everyday lives? Therefore, if you tell yourself that you're going to finish one paragraph at a time, you'll actually have more willpower, feel more motivated, and get more done than if you tell yourself that you're going to finish that 5-page paper right now. Additionally, chunking increases our confidence in ourselves. The other psychological factor influencing our willpower levels is confidence. A task will require less willpower the more confident you are about it. Suppose your goal is to shed 20 pounds. Most strangers I approach on the street would say they had no confidence at all if I asked them how confident they were about this. However, if we used chunking and made this only 1 pound, most people would say, "Yeah, I could do it." It's the little victories that build confidence. When you focus more on small milestones, you gradually gain confidence in your ability to achieve your ultimate goal. You begin to believe that you can actually do it. A great way to build confidence using small wins is by tracking your growth. By keeping a record of your progress and celebrating each small achievement, you reinforce the belief in your capabilities. For example, if you want to lose weight, It's very effective to download an app that allows you to track your progress by tracking your weight and gradually watching it drop. This boosts your confidence, and it takes less and less willpower to return to the gym or stick to your diet. The third way we can influence our levels of willpower is to change our perception of willpower itself. According to a 2010 study, our perceptions of willpower have a significant impact on our actual levels of it. For example, if you believe willpower is limited, you will lose willpower faster than someone who believes willpower is unlimited. So, what can we do about it? How can we improve our willpower? First, we need to understand the real facts about it. The fact is, we have much more willpower than we think we do. Our brain just makes us believe we have less. But if you have watched my old videos, you know more about how your brain works. And knowing more gives you more power, which means you can use your willpower better. Therefore, I like to think that through researching willpower, we've learned how to use our limitless supply of willpower more effectively than the typical person. You'll eventually discover that you have more willpower if you embrace this exact belief. By understanding the true nature of willpower, you can overcome the limitations imposed by your brain and tap into your full potential. The fourth way to affect our willpower is by changing our identity. When our identity matches our goals and habits, it reduces the need for a lot of willpower. Changing our identity isn't simple, but one effective method is to be mindful of our language. How we express things impacts how we see ourselves. For instance, instead of saying I can't smoke when the urge comes, say I am not a smoker because I committed to quitting. This shift in language helps reshape our identity and makes it easier to stick to our goals. By consistently using language that aligns with our desired identity, we reinforce the belief that we are capable of achieving our goals. The person in the first example still thinks of themselves as a smoker trying to quit, while the person in the second example sees themselves as someone who never smoked. Over time, believing in this new identity makes it easier to stick to the habit, requiring less willpower. Another helpful tip is to avoid saying, I can't, I have to, I must if I want to. The first three phrases reflect the old identity you're changing, but saying I want to supports your new identity. By using positive language and framing our goals in terms of what we want, rather than what we have to do, we shift our mindset towards embracing our new identity. This change in perspective empowers us to take ownership of our actions and fosters a sense of determination and self-belief. The fifth and final way to influence our willpower is by practicing high-level thinking. According to a study conducted in 2006, people who spend more time thinking high-level thoughts have significantly higher willpower throughout the day than those who think low-level thoughts. High-level thinking involves focusing on long-term goals, making strategic plans, and considering the bigger picture. By engaging in this type of thinking, we are able to prioritize our actions and make decisions that align with our new identity. This helps us stay motivated and committed to our goals, ultimately strengthening our willpower. Additionally, high-level thinking allows us to overcome obstacles and setbacks by finding creative solutions and maintaining a positive mindset. So, what's the difference between the two? Low-level thinking is when you focus on short-term goals and specifics. For example, you might think about how you'll get to the gym. You think about how you're going to reduce your weight. You plan the meals you're going to eat. On the other hand, high-level thinking involves considering longer-term and more broad concepts. It's okay to have basic thoughts because they help us plan. For example, thinking about what to cook for dinner is necessary. However, it's better to focus more on higher-level thoughts. These thoughts give us a sense of purpose and meaning. When you deeply consider why you're making changes, like to your diet, you truly start to believe it's the best thing for you. A helpful exercise is to take the keystone habit that you're trying to build and write a whole page about why you want to stick to it. This can strengthen your commitment and understanding of the habit you're trying to build. By understanding the underlying reasons and motivations behind our habits, we can cultivate a stronger sense of determination and resilience. This deeper level of introspection allows us to align our actions with our values, making it easier to stay committed to our goals. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider subscribing. Let's meet again in the next video.